We're live, Mr. Wade. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizeans Affair Show number 280. 280. We made it.
Right.
Uh, we're grateful for your tuning in and listening to what we have to offer every time. Either when we're alive, alive, when we are live, or at your own convenience. When you have your own timing. Nevertheless, we've seen our numbers keep growing rapidly, and that's the reason why we want to be expressing our gratitude to you ever so more. Thank you very much again, and I'll be your temporary chairman for tonight. Our chairman is not yet. He might be in the background doing something else to present for us tonight. But in the meantime, we're launching the program, and we're going to do the preliminaries and move on from there. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Leonard Brackett, your temporary host, and we have with us tonight our host for the Wednesday night program, our senior panelist, Mr. Roody Wade. I will do a short prayer, and then I'll yield to Mr. Wade to bless us with a reading. I'll bow my head.
Thank you.
Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, thou who art our creator, thou who knows our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts, into thy hand we commend ourselves, asking that thou mayest continue to be merciful unto us. We pray that thou mayest continue to grant us wisdom, knowledge, understanding, endurance, courage, strength, perseverance, and most of all, Lord, we pray that thou mayest give us the fortitude to hold fast and speak truth to power when need be. We do not take lightly our undertakings, and we pray that thou would be there with us as we pursue this process of uh, broadcasting the Belizean Affairs show. Please continue to bless our family members, friends, and loved ones wherever they are. Don't know them by name and number. Please bless our countrymen, our people, and our leader in our country of Belize. Please bless the people and country and leadership of this United States as well, and many and all the other countries, especially those who have need of food and clothes and shelter, and those who are in hurricane and tornadoes and war zones and all kind of natural disasters and man-made disasters, loving Father. Please be merciful unto us. For we ask His mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Are you, Mr.
Amen.
Wood?
Amen. Thank you, Leonard.
Welcome, sir.
It's always a pleasure. Again, it's always a pleasure when I sit here in your company, my brother, right?
The pleasure
I
is
feel
mine, too, Mr.
satisfied.
Wade.
So, you know, again, want to welcome again. I'll do another welcome. 'Cause we appreciate our viewers and our listeners. And like you say, whenever they view us, whatever, they view us live or they're strolling and they come across the program and they tap into it. And, for those who do that, thank you. And share it after you finish watching. Share it, right? Because at some point, I know it's residue. It's beneficiary. It's things that are happening in real time in your little country of Belize. Because we are about people and nation, and we speak on issues and things that are directly affecting our people and nation. So again, I want to thank you, Leonard, and viewers and listeners, and hopefully our chairman for tonight, Mr. Gregory Brackett, is in background queuing up. And when he shows up, we will graciously pass the show over to him because he is the chairman for tonight. Um, Welcome again to our 280 edition of our Belizean Affairs show on the blessed Monday, 14th April 2025. Again, thanks to all those who view us. And Leonard, again, one of our faithful viewers, faithful religiously, sent us a passage from, it says, to read from Jeremiah chapter 5, 1 to 6. And it reads, again, thank you for sending us, that verse to read tonight. And I will fulfill your wishes. Thank you. And it reads, run to and fro through the streets of Jerusalem. Look and take note. Search her squares to see if you can find a man, one who does justice and seeks truth, that I may pardon her. True, though they say, as the Lord lives, yet they swear falsely. O Lord, do not your eyes look for truth? You have struck them down, but they felt no anguish. You have consumed them, but they refuse to take correction. They have made their faces harder than rock. They have refused to repent. Then I said, these are only the poor. They have no sense, for they do not know the way of the Lord, the justice of their God. I will go to the great and will speak to them, for they know the way of the Lord, the justice of their God. But they all alike had broken the yoke, they had burst the bond. Therefore, a lion from the desert will strike them down. A wolf from the desert shall devastate them. A leopard is watching their cities. Everyone who goes out of them shall be torn into pieces, because their transgressions are many, their apostasies are great. That's my reading from Jeremiah chapter 5, 1 to 7.
Just a second, Mr. Just want to. Could you give us a short public announcement, sir, if you don't mind?
Thank
We're
you,
very, very much
dear
appreciated.
Leonard. My people, you know, um, again, I always speak about, the fatalities on a daily occurrence. We see these buses, some of them on fire, most of them running off the road. I have seen, witnessed some of these buses on high speed, passing vehicles in and out, swerving out of traffic, in and out on the highway on very, very high speed. And when I look, some young man driving these buses, with no experience, none whatsoever. They seems like to be happy sitting behind a, in the driver's seat, controlling a bus with so many lives, so many lives. And again, with no experience. I see it happen all the time. Seems that their feet are a little heavy. So I called on the authorities, the transport department. Don't be stopping the flow of traffic of innocent people. You know, crack down on some of these buses, especially now, because the amount of traffic accidents on a weekly basis now and full of passengers is happening. And some fatalities, my heart goes out to those who injured in these accidents, but I guess that they know what to do. If you came out alive, I just hope and pray that you take the matters into your hands and put it to the authorities, get an attorney if you can afford one, you know, and take these bus drivers and their owners to the court, because most of them are negligent. Most of them do not obey the traffic laws on the road. They do not. As I speak from what I see, and sadly, the two-wheel motorcycles accidents, regular basis, fatalities, so sad. I don't know what's going on, but these are the things that the system, the transport department, the government in a whole, the police, they all need to take heed. That's what they need to do. Don't be active after the fact, after so many lives has been lost. No, it's time for you to start doing the right thing now. So that's my little public announcement that I have to offer, because it's real,
Thank you very
it's
much, Mr.
happening.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Wade. Uh, our chairman is not available yet, so we'll just proceed uh, in the meantime. I have an article that I had written before. We had read some parts of it, and in the last couple of uh, meeting discussions that we had on this platform, we were not able to finish it up. So I'll take the privilege to now see if I can go back and pick up where we left off. But before going to where we left off, I want to touch a couple of parts in the beginning of it so as to give a context so people can remember what is it that we were talking about. And then maybe go to the parts that we didn't finish read and see if I can finish read those. This matter was related to the Belize Constitution violations of Section 90 and the Roper Schedule 1. Uh, we had some citations here. I'm going to read out the citations, but I'm not going to read everything that goes with those citations. I'm going to read a couple of them and then go to the part that I said I wanted to continue on with. Uh, there was a set of citations from the Belize Constitution, such as Part 1, Section 1, and Section 2, Subsection 1, as well as Part 2, Section 6, Subsection 1, and Section 16, Subsection 1 and 2, as well as Section 20 of the Constitution, Subsection 1 and Subsection 2 and 3, all the way through Subsection 8. As well as we also had uh, Part 6 of the Constitution of Belize, Section 88 and Section 89 and Section 90, which is the main part that most people are acquainted with or refer to. when speaking to these matters, and Section 91, as well as Part 7, Section 95, which deals with the authority of the court and the responsibility of the court in terms of assuming original jurisdiction for any matter, civil matter, as well as criminal matters in our country under our constitution. Uh, I had skipped a part, as I previously said, when we were doing the readings, because we had a different show. Well, not necessarily a different show, but we had guests on last two shows, and we had to give them the time so that they could, you know, make avail to themselves or platform so that they could have contributed their own thoughts in regards to some of these matters. Uh, I'll read the Belize Constitution, Part 1, Section 1, and Section 2, Subsection 1. Section 1 reads as follows: The state, Section 1, Subsection 1. Belize shall be a sovereign democratic state of Central America in the Caribbean region. Section 2, Subsection 1 reads, in regards to the Constitution, is supreme law. It reads as follows: This Constitution, being the Belize Constitution or the Constitution of Belize, is the supreme law of Belize. And if any other law, such as those that the legislators would make, or rules or protocols or procedures or practices that the ministers they put in place, such as SIs or whatever not, if any of those, such as it calls them here, other law, if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution, then that other law shall, to the extent of the inconsistencies, be void. That is to say, you can't go and make any law or rules or procedures, protocols, or practices that violates the Constitution, because that's an unlawful act, and implementing any such unlawful act is a violation of the Constitution itself and should be considered as null and void. And anybody that tries to do that kind of stuff are no more than what you'd call scoff laws, which is why we refer to some of our ministers when they conduct themselves in that manner. And sometimes when the legislator make certain laws that are inconsistent with the Constitution, we also address those and comment on them and classify them for the public consumption purpose as being null and void. Of course, we are not a judge, nor do we have the power or authority of law. But we know what the law is, which is why we keep on trying to educate you about it. That is to say, we have it in black and white as our Constitution, and then we have what you call settled law, such as the cases that go to the court and are ruled upon. Once they go to the highest level of our legal system, they're called settled law. And those settled law then become the basis on which we have an expectation that our judicial system and our country will give us justice on the basis of those settled law. And when they don't give us justice on the basis of those settled law, then we know that they are contravening the Constitution, they're contravening the laws of the country, they are contravening even sometimes our very constitutional rights and liberties. That's the basis on which we make those measurements, and any of us could make those measurements, and we can anticipate what the law prescribes and anticipate what the judiciary system, such as the judges and the lawyers and everybody else, should give us as an end result. So sometimes when we, particularly on this platform, jump the gun and tell you what is happening and what is to be expected from what is happening, it's not because we are any specialized minds or we are any kind of a like prophet or people that predict things ahead of time willy nilly. No, we're not. The basis on which we make those statements or comments is the sense of anticipation based on the standards or the criteria already established. Like I said, settled law. And when a judge rules contrary to settled law, it means that that judge is bastardizing the process, is not abiding by what the judge is supposed to do, and therefore that judge ruling can be taken up to a higher level court above that judge for further judicial review, or in the case of um, uh, you have the Supreme Court, you have the appellate court, local Belize appellate court, and then above the appellate court you have the Caribbean court for the regional final decision. So when we say things that we say, we don't say them lightly, or do we try to conflate or get ourselves caught up into situations where what we say is questioned and being found wanting in terms of being incorrect. We're not either saying either that we're so perfect that we can't make mistakes. Because as human beings, you know, we're all subject to making mistakes. And I'm saying also the judges, they're subject to making mistakes. So in this particular regard, we have a pending um, uh, court declaration on this particular issue of the Section 90 violation, which the government had acknowledged, the court had acknowledged, and now the court has to rule on. And because of recent court rulings, I personally, as well as Mr. Wade and others, have been indicating that the way those rulings were, they were not comporting with the expectations of the people based on what we had known to be our laws and our rulings. They seem to be making new rulings that comport to some other different law, different from the constitution that we currently have, to try and bastardize the constitution. Because when Judge Navy, for example, made her disposition of that case that was before her in regards to this matter, she disposed of that case without addressing the constitutional issue. And therefore, as a result, she let the government get exculpated into continuing the bastardization and the violation of the Constitution. In that regards, then, I personally would say, Leonard Brackett, that she did not fulfill her obligation as a court of recourse. She did not render justice. She did not stop the violation of the Constitution, but rather enabled the violators to continue violating it. And the ones who were trying to stop them from violating it, she kind of like gave a back slap, right? Get out of my court. You know, that's the end of that. I don't want to hear from you anymore. Get away from me. When in fact she was authorized and empowered. It was her jurisdiction. It was her right. And it was her, not only her right, but it was her obligation to do justice to the Constitution, which she did not do. And therefore the matter continues languishing and being dealt with, with other cases being brought to try and make that mandamus comes to fruition. And now we're still waiting for, I think it's Judge Honduras to give us the final ruling. Took the case into submission, and we thought it would have been given a final ruling, written ruling, by the end of the week. It didn't happen. We're now at the beginning of another week. Hopefully it might have, we're at the end of the day right now. So, and we haven't heard anything. So more likely than not, it might be tomorrow or some other day during the course of this week or next week or the following week or the following month or the following year. I'm not trying to be facetious when I say that or say it like that, right? Because we have had cases under previous Supreme Court situations where the cases were not ruled upon in a timely manner. And for months and months and months, those cases drag on. Some of them were criminal cases. where people were sitting in jail for extensive amount of time, only to find out that they were ruled as being not guilty. Why did they have to sit in jail extra time beyond when the case was adjudicated or the ruling was made? Because the ruling wasn't in a hard copy format being written out. It was just a declaration. They could not take the matter to the other courts above to challenge, because you have to have the final ruling on the hard copies, which you have to file for further judicial review. You can't say, well, the judge said that, well, this and that, and the court don't go by hearsay. So I'm kind of like going off on a tangent, but let me just stay focused on what I was doing here. And having read all the citations above just now, and I'm going to tell you up front, this is not going to be the last time we're going to touch this subject, because by the time that ruling comes out, either tomorrow or day after, or whenever it comes out, we're going to tackle it again. But I'm of the impression that it's not going to be ruled the way it's supposed to be ruled, because I don't see these judges that we currently have on these cases ruling against the government. They have not had that kind of track record. Out of 6 cases, 1 case they ruled against the government, and that was the BSI ESR case. Why? Because that big company had what you call financial muscle to fight their way through and intimidate the government and the court, to the point where the matter didn't have to go to any further court above. The prime minister took that matter into his own hand and is now holding it hostage. So I'm not talking over my head, nor am I saying something that doesn't go like that. I'm talking about what we now know as being the record. Uh, okay, so I read those 2 portions there of the Constitution. That is Section 1, which dealt with the classification of what the state is. And I also read Section 2, subsection 1, in regards to the authority and power of the Constitution as being the supreme law of our land, of our country. I don't want to read any more of that. I want to go all the way to where I had left off last time and see if I can pick up. Let me see. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, so that's 95. It was somewhere above 95. Electoral divisions, no. Elections and boundaries. Okay, so 20. Yeah, I dealt with all the issues under Section 20 of the Constitution. So what I want to do then, to continue on and try to finish up, is to read part 6 of our Constitution of Belize and dealing with Section 88 and Section 89, Section 90, and 91. That is, I'm going to deal more substantively now in terms of how the law pronounces these matters, rather than how we speak to them verbally, or how the presentation was made in the court verbally. These citations were not attached to the court presentation, and therefore I took the liberty of citing them out so people could go back into their own personal copy of the Constitution and review what the Constitution says in its own word about those matters. So they don't have to take somebody's verbal presentation as the law of the land. It is right there in the Constitution, and I'm going to read now. In regards to the Election and Boundaries Commission, Section 88 of our Constitution, subsection 1, all the way to 14 inclusive. I'm not going to read all of those, of course, all the way through 14. I'm going to read part of Section 1. And that part that I want to read goes as follows. There shall be an Election and Boundaries Commission, which shall consist of a chairman, and 4 other members, who shall be persons of integrity and high national status. We know also, I'm not going to read the rest, read the whole of, like I said, subsection 1 through 14, because it's quite a lengthy reading. And I'm just trying to dispose of what we have in front of us here right now. But in that section, between section 1 and section 14, I just read section 1, between section 2 and all the way through 14, there's a portion in there that speaks to not only just the, the constitution, the commission, election and boundaries commission, as having 5 members, but it also clears up as to who those 5 members would be, how they get elected or selected or appointed. Uh, I'll just verbally stipulate to you, the listeners, right now, that the Constitution under those sections prescribes that those 5 members, the chairman and 2 others, meaning 3 of them, are to be recommended by the Prime Minister to the Governor General for ascension to those positions. And the other 2 to make up the 5 are to be recommended by the leader of the opposition, and the Governor General does the ascension to exercise the powers vested in that constitutional body. Uh, there is a problem, though, and has been a problem and continues to be a problem. I don't know how long it's going to continue before it gets resolved. That is that while that body is not supposed to be a political body, why? Because it's under direct supervision and control of the Governor General, with their own powers given to them under the Governor General's writ. And it's a constitutional body, by the way. They're not supposed to account to their rules that is laid out for them. They're not supposed to be hauled and pulled by the political process or the political system or the politicians per se. They're supposed to be an independent entity as the guardian of the of the voting process, how we go about selecting or electing or legislative leaders and other parliamentary processes, such as redivisioning of the different divisions that we have, recommending to increase or decrease divisions, doing apportionment of the voters list into these different divisions, and as required under Section 90, to a nearly as equal division or numbers of people in each division. I'll read Section 89, which deals with the electoral divisions. For example, it says under Section 89, subsection 1, it says, for the purpose of the election of members of the House of Representatives, Belize shall be divided into 31 electoral divisions, which we currently have. The names and boundaries, of which are set out in Schedule 1 to the Representation of the People's Act, Cap 9. That is, we always hear people talk about the lawyers or different people that refer to these different cases that we had recently and still have. We always hear they refer to ROPA. ROPA means the Representation of the People's Act. And under ROPA, there is a schedule that tells anyone how many divisions exist in the country in terms of each of those divisions having a representative from those divisions to represent those divisions in the parliament or in the house. And so um, there's more to that, but I won't go into all of it because, like I said, I'm not trying to read them all. You know, I'm just trying to get to the end, and I'm getting there quickly. Let me read up a little bit more here. It says increase of electoral divisions, such as Section 90, which we hear about a lot, subsection 1, all the way through subsection 4. I will not read them all. I'll just read uh, Section 91 and some other small pieces. It says, the Elections and Boundaries Commission shall, after considering the electoral uh, distribution of the population throughout Belize, they shall make proposals from time to time for the dividing of Belize into electoral divisions in such a way that, and then it goes on to clarify in which such ways, right? But part of the problem here is that the electoral division is directed here under this particular section to do certain things, and it is expected of them under the laws of our country, directed by the Constitution itself, that the election and boundaries having been formed into a regular department with it's a staffed department on a regular day-to-day, 8 hours per day, 5 days a week, you know, for so many years. They're supposed to be doing these jobs. That is to redivision the division or the area or the country, reapportion the voting people, and they are being paid to do that. So they should have the time to do that. It shouldn't be that they exist as an organized department, and when these things need to be done, like they have to go and give them a special or separate subvention or pay them separately to do the job that they're mandated to do constitutionally. But apparently, unless people go and fight the government and force the government, which it shouldn't have to be the government or any private person to get involved with that process and try to fight and force through the Supreme Court to get these things done. It's already a mandate. The department exists there. They're paying them, and they have a staff, on a regular basis. And to do the revisioning, for example, as we show them on our platform, it shouldn't take more than one person a few hours in one day to complete the whole damn exercise. And if they have dozens of people working in that department, how the hell they can't get that done? And the Prime Minister pretend that he's going to offer to get it done in a couple of years' time. He's bamboozling people. They're playing games. And that couple of years' time, they have been saying that from before they got into office the first time, or the previous cycle. And they won the election for that previous cycle. They spent the whole of that cycle, still didn't get it done. Now has won a second period in office, and is now attempting to say, okay, well, they might do it now in 2 more years after. So they're taking 7+ years, and probably at the end of that 2 years too, they will turn around and say, well, it hasn't been done, so it needs to be done, so therefore we're going to get it done. And they keep saying that same kind of nonsense to us over and over and over. They go and they lie to the court, make the same promises to the court. And as of today's date that we're talking, the stuff hasn't been done. But our court, our judiciary, our judges do not have the temperament that is required of them to do what the law requires. That is, holds them in contempt for lying to the court. First of all, for not doing what they're being paid to do, because then they're taking money under false pretense. That's a crime under our laws. Secondly, to go and commit to the court that you're going to do certain things, turn around and do just the opposite. And then the court will turn around and say, okay, well, yeah, because you tried to do something, you know, that's all right. Get out in the court. You have done good enough. You have met your obligations. But the bastardization of the Constitution still continues onward. That's improper. Uh, Let me just read this section here. 19, okay. I'll read two of the conditions that is that is stated under section 90, which I just read just now, and I'll read paragraph A and paragraph B, one after the other. Paragraph A says, they shall deal with these divisions so that each electoral division shall have as nearly as may be an equal number of persons eligible to vote in those divisions. Now, to say nearly as equal doesn't mean it has to be perfectly equal. That is to say, 100 persons in each division. It could be maybe 95 in one and 100 in the other one. It could be maybe 80 in one and 75 in the other one. But something that is not too off balance, so that where you have in some divisions right now, like in Stan Creek West Division, you have over 10,000 voters. In Fort George Division, you have about 2,000 voters. How the devil's the election and Bungle going to put that on the table of the House of Representatives and said that they have complied with the mandate of the Constitution, which requires that they be nearly as equal. Is 2,000 nearly as equal to 10,000? You want to tell me they don't know how to count on their fingers? Or they don't have calculators? Or they don't have computer systems that allow those numbers to be calculated out in a more reasonable expected results? They just don't want to do what they're supposed to do. They should go to jail, like I said. Somebody go and steal a 5 cents bread or a 2 cents mango or something, and they try them and spend hundreds of dollars to try them for a 2 cents or 5 cents article that they probably take out of a store or from wherever. They spend hundreds of dollars trying them for a few pennies that they violated the law on. And you have these scoundrels and scamps ripping off the system, because when that money comes from the treasury for their paycheck, it is we, the Belizean people, that the government come to get that money from. The public officials or the government doesn't take that money out of their own individual pocket, so therefore they can dismiss the idea that, well, they could care less. The money comes out of us. And the law says that if you take money on a false pretext, whether from a private individual or from the government, you're stealing. As in the case of the government, they are embezzling. They are hustling the treasury. And when you go and tell them those kind of things, they feel so offended, because you have to tell them what they already know, because they're the one perpetrating the crime. They feel like they should be more offended than you. Okay? I could care less. I'll still tell them. They don't like what I tell them, just do the next best. I'll read paragraph B. It says, the total numbers of electoral divisions shall be no less than 28. And then, I'm sorry. There's another portion here that I'd like to read before moving on to section 95. And this is under section 91. Redivision of electoral divisions. Under section 91, it reads as follows. It says, any redivision of electoral divisions affected in accordance with section 90, above which we just read portions of this constitution, shall, in respect of the elections of members to the House of Representatives, come into operations at the next general elections held. After such redivisions and not before or earlier. So that clears up that portion, for example, that they need to have these redivisions done in time. If they know that an election is coming, is due a year ahead, they should be preparing and planning and having these things completed before the election is to be held. You can't wait until the election is to be held to say, okay, well, um, we need to do it. So we should start doing it now. That's not why we have a whole department being paid to scam the system and the process. I'll go back and read uh, Part 7, Section 95 of the Constitution of Belize, which I referred to earlier and which was read the last time. We had cut out the part that we just read just now in order to go and speak to Section 95. And it says as follows: the Belize Supreme Court or High Court of Belize, under Section 95, subsection 1 to subsection all the way through subsection 4, inclusive, states in part, the Supreme Court shall, not may, or could, or should, or would, or if, it says shall. It's a command. And when you have a command being directed to any entity inside of the Constitution, that the Constitution is empowering or giving authority, that command is a mandamus from the people, from the plebiscite, from the people of the country. It's a mandamus. It's a mandatory requirement in order to fulfill their obligations. And failing to fulfill that mandate, then they're in dereliction of their responsibilities or duties. So I don't want them to come telling me no craziness that, because of a technical tumbling agreement, a constitutional case had to be thrown out, or had to be ignored, or left to die for lack of attention, when the Constitution is empowering the Supreme Court to deal with those matters and deal with them effectively without any hesitation. As we'll see right now, as I finish reading this particular paragraph, it goes on to say the Supreme Court shall have unlimited original jurisdiction. That is, that there is no question as to whether or not a criminal act can be dealt with and or tried in the Supreme Court, or a civil complaint or a civil issue can be taken up by the Supreme Court and dealt with effectively and have a disposition of it. Any civil or criminal proceedings under any law and such jurisdictions and powers as may be conferred on it, being the Supreme Court, by the Constitution or any other law. As I said, the Supreme Court have original jurisdiction and the final say. The Congress can't declare a law to be constitutional or legal. That is the purview of the Supreme Court, to interpret any law that the Congress makes and validate that law by the process of judicial review. And if the Supreme Court declares that a law does not meet constitutional muster, or it violates or is violative of the Constitution, then that law ought to be dealt with as the Constitution itself says, null and void and stricken from the records, or revisited and corrected where need be, for it to come within the bounds of the Constitution and be compliant to what the Constitution expects or requires of it. And that's the end of that reading. As like I said, we had spent like three different sessions, portions of each of those three sessions, trying to go through that particular essay. It's mostly just a bunch of, I would say, regular words, but the way it is structured or written, they call it constitutional drafting. And therefore, even though all those words, most of them, most people should be able to understand, it is in the way how these laws are drafted that makes a difference as to why lawyers go to court and contest on different sides of any issue these particular legal citations. And like I said, because we have what you call settled law or stare decisis law, laws that have been tried over and over at different levels of our court system, and when they have gotten a review by the highest sections of the judiciary system and a ruling is made, then that ruling becomes a settled law on which all other judges are expected to abide, review their cases in the context of what that particular settlement or settled law indicates, and rule accordingly. Now we're finding that in our country, judges are coming in the country and making ruling that doesn't comport to the existing constitution, and or they ignore it as if it doesn't have no meaning or significance to them. And they continue bastardizing it as the current political leaders and of the country are doing. And they don't want to hear when you tell them that they're in violation of the constitution. They pretend that it doesn't exist, or that they, uh, they basically have been behaving as autocrats. When the constitution says in part one, section one, that Belize is a democratic country. How can you have a democratic country and you have autocratic rule violating the constitution itself? Willfully so, not by errors, omissions, or oversight, but willful violations. I yield back, Mr. Wade, for any personal comment you might want to
Thank
include
you.
on what I just
Thank
read.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Our chairman isn't available yet, and so I guess we'll just do the best we can and carry through for the rest of the night. Thank
Thank
you very much.
you.
It's you.
Thank you. You know, these are things that, it's not the first time, he's talking about this very same item, right? I will not say much on it, as to, the matter at hand in terms of the way the system is, and the way the court system is set up, and the way the government structure is set up. You must first realize that most of these judges are imported from other countries. They come with whatever agenda they comes with, or whatever the person employing them, whatever their employer asks them to do, whether they do what their employer asks them to do, or do what is right by our constitution. We have seen the practice that the ones them that stray away from what their employer, that means whether a UDP government will bring them in, or a PUP government. That's what I'm saying about their employer. The ones that stray from their assignment, they do not get their contract renewed. Some of them are sent back immediately. We've seen it.
Yep.
Should these things happen? No, but sadly, wasn't the UDP that is paying them. It's not the PUP. Johnny Briseño and his government is paying. No, it's the people, the taxpayers' dollars. The country's money paying them. But we see, you know, the assignment that they come with. Um, I, for one, right now, is just waiting on the ruling of that judge from, I don't know where he comes from, but he's the one that is sitting on my case. Also ruled last week. We're waiting this week.
So wait.
So you want to say something, Leonard? Go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. I just wanted to add to what you just said, no? When you said you don't know where he came from. He comes, we have done a research on him, and he comes from one of those autocratic countries that had a president who, is one of those hard-fisted person, okay? And he had been ruling in that country apparently under that type of perspective and fear and ruling according to the heavy-handed bosses. And they're coming to Belize and apparently are being allowed or encouraged to do the same thing because they hire them based on their temperament that they have experienced with their previous records. They look at their records and that's the basis on which they hire them. I yield back, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See, should that be happening?
No.
They come here to do a job, right? To honor and obey our constitution, our laws, and enforce it. They are the enforcers of our laws and our constitution. They enforce it. So when a government is not doing right by the laws and the constitution, they are the one that should tell them, your constitution says that you should do X, Y, and Z. Not play no hanky-panky with them. No, because it's not right. It's not right to do that. It's wrong. So, as for me, I'm waiting on the ruling of, the case at hand. Whatever ruling he comes with, that's his ruling. So, our group will decide the next step, the way forward, what we'll do next. Until then, we'll just wait. Like I said, it's supposed to have happened last week. Let's see if it'll happen this week. And we are not going away from our constitution. We are not doing nothing from space or asking to do nothing from another world or from outer space. No, we are asking him to enforce our constitutional right. Not my right, not Johnny Briseño right or Mr. Courtney right or Mr. whoever, what the other attorneys, right? Or the UDP rights. No, because this should have happened a long time ago. The UDP refused. Hey, this one they're refusing. Why? So, are we crazy? Are we stupid? Are we something wrong with us to go to the court and ask the court to please tell the government to please honor the constitution, the law of the land? That's all we're asking. What is so hard in doing that? And sadly, the way this man, Johnny Briseño, the Prime Minister of this country, orchestrated this whole scenario, like we are the bad ones. We should be doing, we are so low or classless, so we shouldn't even be addressing this issue, right? Because it's not our prerogative. Doesn't concern us. We are not the Prime Minister, like you said. If Mr. Man from the union in the sugarcane guy, the chairman wanted something to do or to say or wanted a law pass, he should have put his name up to be prime minister. That's what he said. So he's the prime minister, so he do and say and whatever else he please. Because he is the prime minister and the only one that should do these things. Well, Mr. Man, you're wrong. Very, 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 very wrong. Because sadly, when you come down off that seat, who are you? Who are you? So, as for me, as a Belizean, again, a voter, born Belizean, one who had served his country, right? I think that I have that God-given right to question, Mr. Man, why are you not obeying the Constitution? And if Mr. Barrow would have been there, I'd have asked him the same thing too. I question why he took us to the ICJ. I was a no to the ICJ. You see the length and breadth he went. You see the length and breadth he went to achieve his mission. There he is now. Right? He's the one that got us there. I wonder how he feels right now. He did a good thing. I clap for him. He did a good thing. Right? Yeah. For you. But for thousands of Belizeans, you did the wrong thing. So I question why I always say, why do we have to, import these judges? Why? We have Belizean judges that can do a better job for Belizeans. That's in my humble opinion, right? So all these things need to be looked at. And as for our election and boundaries department, they're also born in a UDP in power. They answer to the UDP. When a PUP in power, the PUP sets them up and they answer to a PUP government. They will not rock the boat or shuffle any card. Or no, they will dance to the tune of the PUP. Same way they did and danced the tune of the UDP. What I'm saying is, I've been in their so-called election and boundaries meeting before an election. They tell you all the rules and all the things that you should and should not do, and things that you should do and shouldn't do. And they tell you the laws, the election and boundary commission laws in this country. But it's all a mouthful of hot air, like I said it publicly. As we watch out, the atmosphere change. Election comes, you see they back to their own nastiness, right? Disregard the laws of that governs the electoral process. Who hold these people accountable? There are people, live people, not buried people. Live people come to the media and says experience. Their experience in the electoral process. I, for one, tell them my experience. Well, yet they say, so you bring evidence. You need evidence. See? The OAS comes here and they should be witnessing a free and fair and democratic election. Right? They go back and they say, yeah, Belize a free, fair, and democratic election. Lie. Right off the bat, lie. That's not what happened. in our electoral process here in this country.
Uh, is that it?
You want to say something, Leonard?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Um, I had since the case has not been um, the judge has not given his decision yet. He held over the decision. Um, I wanted to take the liberty, since I had a copy of the stuff that was submitted for the case, to just give the public a taste or a sense of, how the court process happened. Why is it that we're where we are, and why is it that we have an expectation that the judge will rule in a certain kind of way, rather than just for them to hear from our words, just alone. I wanted to ask
Go
if I
ahead.
can
Go
just
ahead.
go ahead and deal with
I'll
this.
leave the floor to you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir.
Go ahead.
Uh, for those who are listening to our program now and will listen thereafter, sometime in the future at your own convenience, I want to take the liberty, as I had asked Mr. Wade just now, to try and give you a flavor of what the presentation, what the claim was, and what Mr. Wade, as the claimant, as the primary claimant in this particular instance, had his lawyer submitted on his behalf. Okay? So this document is the claim that was submitted to the Supreme Court. And it says, in the High Court of Belize, AD 2024, claim number is a civil case, 730 of 2024, number 1. In the matter of the Constitution of Belize, and in the matter of Section 1 and Section 6 and Section 20 and Section 90 and Section 95 of the Belize Constitution, and in the matter of the first schedule of the Representation of the People's Act, you always hear we refer to ROPA, Cap 9, and in the matter of Section 22 of the Law Revisions Act, Cap 3, between Roody Levinsky Wade, Mr. Wade, whom is our senior panelist on our program for tonight. He was the primary litigant or complainant, as well as in conjunction with Mr. Hubert Dennis Enriquez, Mr. Paul Marcel Morgan, Mr. William Mejia, Mr. Godwin Bernard Sutherland, Mr. Antonio Giovanni de la Fuente, and Mr. Roberto Antonio uh, Lopez. Um, uh, I can't take this call right now. My daughter is trying to call me. I don't know. I hope it's not an emergency, but I need to get through this process here right now. So those are the primary people that brought the case as registered voters in Belize, and against the Election and Boundaries Commission as and represented by the chairman, Oscar A. Sabido, Senior Counsel, ST, and as well as the Attorney General of Belize, who were the respondents in this particular matter. I'll now go on to read what is called the claimants argue the following facts. That is, the argument of the claimants, or what the claimants submit to the court to justify their reason for making their claims, bringing the matter to court. That is to say, the basis on which they end up having what you call um, Standings. Standings is not just a regular plain word. In the legal jargon, or when it's pronounced or used in the context of legal matters or case matters or court matters, standings means not just to be able to stand up. It means having a right or a vested right or privilege accorded by whatever manner or means. But you have to have that privilege accorded to you or the right to be able to justify your presence in court. Otherwise, if you don't have standings in court in regards to any matter, the judge doesn't have to entertain you or your issue. You have to have standings. So to show that they had standings, they had their lawyers stipulate, as in a document like this, some particular points of law, points of constitutional rights, violation of those rights, or an interest in the well-being and preservation of the Constitution per se, and therefore the right to demand that their constitution and constitutional rights are upheld and or abided by, either by an individual, private person, or any government institution or government official. So it goes on to read as follows. The claimants argue the following facts. Fact number one, I think I need to enlarge this a little bit. So I'll have to keep going back and forward. So you'll just pardon me. I'm not going to be reading it too fluently. Anyhow, let me stop making excuses and just do the best I can, right? They argue as in statement number one. The tumbling order or the consent order was signed. That is, previous to this particular case, another group of individuals, some of the same individuals, but not with Mr. Wade included, had submitted a case that went through the court, and the judge allowed those plaintiffs to enter into an agreement with the government for the government to, after having acknowledged their violation of the law, the government requested the court to let the plaintiffs allow the government to enter into an agreement with them to allow the government, instead of getting a ruling against the government by the judge at that time, they would go and have some time to make corrective measures. And apparently the plaintiffs at the time that took the case to the court were not aware of what a tumbling agreement is. So the judge came back and classified their agreement that they had, that the judge entertained under her judicial temperament, by the way. The government didn't do what they said they was going to do according to the agreement. So the plaintiffs, they came back to the judge, telling the judge or complaining to the judge that the government is refusing to comply. They did something, but they didn't do what they were supposed to have done. The judge turned around and said, well, I believe the government. I don't believe you. Therefore, I'm going to dismiss your request to have me tell the government what to do to correct the agreement. I, as the judge, I'm not going to get in the middle of you guys' agreement that you had between yourselves, even though I'm the one that entertained it and ruled upon it, because it could not be entered into without that judge's authorization. That judge had, as we stipulated earlier, when matters go to the Supreme Court, unlimited, right? Unlimited judicial powers. And the case was assigned to that judge. So that judge had to dispose of that case according to law. The judge couldn't make a law or a ruling that did not comport with the laws. They had to abide by the laws. So in order for her to justify what she did to brush away these people's case, she produced a ruling of 41 pages explaining what a tumbling law is and previous cases that had to do with tumbling law and a whole lot of blah, 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 blah. And at the end of the day, she struck out the gentleman in case under the guise that they had entered into an agreement that she cannot, at that point in time, no remedy for them. That they had a fault in their case by having entered into that agreement. She should not have encouraged them or allowed the government to have her encourage these people to let her, under her writ as a Supreme Court judge, to let the government go and correct the government failures, and didn't correct the failures, but then she going to exculpate them and give them a chance and say, well, she don't believe what the complainants are complaining, and she can't give the complainants the remedy that they are looking for. So therefore, she struck the damn thing out of court. In other words, get out of my face. I don't want to see you anymore. And for all intents and purposes, unless you have money to go to a higher court above me, then you're stuck. Because only a higher court above her would overrule her error, omission, oversight, out in there to say malfeasance. Okay? Well, that's not kind of language that you use um, in regards to a judge's decision, because judges have the right to make a decision whether right or wrong. But that doesn't mean that if they are wrong, you can't complain about the wrong or the wrongfulness. Or if you have evidence that supports your perspective in regards to how the ruling came about or what the ruling turned out to be and how the ruling hamstrung these people from being able to go forward because they did not have additional resources compared to the government who had the treasury of the country in their own back pocket. All these things are disadvantaged position that that particular judge and judgment put these people in, to the point now where a new case was brought up and the new lawyers are trying to say to these plaintiffs that that matter was already adjudicated, and on that basis of it being adjudicated, for example, not the substantively constitutional matter, but the request for redress was addressed according to the very same judge, stipulating in her judgment that she was not addressing the original constitutional question. Why? Because there was a flaw in these people's case, so somebody else needs to bring the case. When somebody else brought the case, now the new judge, Judge Honduras, who is still holding this case in abeyance, well, not in abeyance, the ruling. He has not ruled yet. He took it into submission. This judge allowed a bunch of knucklehead, what you'd call some of the best lawyers in our country, who are acting or comporting outside of proper legal practice, because some of the things that they did, they should have been sanctioned by the judge for contempt of court in how they behaved in that court. And some of the submittals that they made. For example, I'm making strong statements, so I need to be able to clarify some of those strong statements. For example, in any court matter, when somebody brings a case to the court, you have what you call the complainants, and then you have the complainants is complaining about some wrong that somebody did to them, right? So the person that did the wrong in this instance would be the respondent, right? When a person bring a matter to court and submit that matter to the court then has jurisdiction to demand of the other people for them to submit counter arguments and to say why is it that this matter should not be ruled in favor of the person that brought it. So you call that a respondent. When the matter was taken to court and the request was made to the respondents to submit their response, they submit a response that only addressed, I think it was 2 of the items on the list of the complainants, and dismiss the rest of it and pretend like it didn't exist, but they didn't see the rest of it on the documents, and refuse to entertain a discussion, debate, and or clarification or proceedings on those complaints. And the judge allowed them jackals to get away with that. Okay? To the point where what they submitted became the focus of the case instead of the complaints that was brought to the judge in the first instance. which is the way it should have been done. So the judge should have been able to sanction those guys for malpractice and misrepresentation and not abiding to the court's process, procedures, and protocol, because that's how cases are litigated. As a respondent or a defendant, you have to address the complaint against you, and you can't just dismiss it, because in doing so, you're leaving yourself liable to not having responded, and therefore the complaint is the basis on which the judge then would make a ruling. So any good lawyer would try and, as a minimum, on behalf of their client, provide some defense or some kind of means of destroying the validity of the complaint first and foremost, and then probably they would go into other extraneous issues. But you wouldn't use extraneous issues and leave the original case unaddressed, and that's what the particular judge in the first instance, Judge Neby, did. And then as a result, she ruled on what those other people wanted, or how those people wanted the case to proceed. They came to defend that particular process, and the case got kind of like hard and pulled and twisted around, and eventually got ruled upon incorrectly at that. But I'm saying, and in the case of, and in the present case now, which we are reading about, the second thing that Mr. Wade got involved and he became the leader of that particular case, we find out that the judge allowed these guys to come into the court with 800 odd pages of bogus documentation that had nothing to do with the substantive case. And then Mr. Courtney, he will get on the radio, wave on the airwaves, the television stations, then, and say that because Mr. Wade and his legal team did not submit as part of their bundle on time, because as a requirement or part of the process as well, when they do the case management, you submit, each side submit their own document to prove their side of the case. And both sides must be aware of what is it that the other side, you must have comparable or equal documents. So that when the judge discusses the case, everybody is on top of the same information. But what these guys did was go to the Election and Boundaries Department and haul out records from the Election and Boundaries Department from when the department was first originally instituted. The whole history of that department for 40-odd years, and submitted that as reading material for the judge to entertain himself with, to the extent of getting bored and frustrated and whatever else, not, because all that matter that had nothing to do with the case was a response to the case, other than for mischief making. And then turn around and complain that, well, the client that brought the matter to the court did not bundle all that material together and submit it on time, so therefore their case should be thrown out. You brought those bundle of insignificant or unimportant documents to the court. It's your responsibility to bundle and submit them. But that's how the system works. That's how these jackals operate. They have and pull the system. They spend a lot of time. They got two of the biggest law firms in the country get together and conspire to do that kind of behavior, and the judge entertains it instead of dealing with the substantive matter of the case. And I'm running out of time, and I'm just trying to verbally contextualize the history of the case and why is it that we are where we are, because a lot of people don't understand, know these things, and people are pushing out opinions, ideas, and information out there which they're entitled to push out, but they're conflating and misunderstanding and misconstruing and misinforming. And as a result, a lot of people have the wrong awareness of the facts. And they keep arguing these things without proper credibility, let me just read a little more of this thing, and it's very long. I'll have to stop after a while because I have to yield back to Mr. Wade, and probably we continue this on another night as well. But let me just read a little bit more of it, just to let you get a flavor or a feel, you the public get a flavor or a feel for what the mechanics and the process was or is and what it's all about. So I mentioned to you that there was a tumbling agreement entered into, which should not have been entertained in the first place because the government had already acknowledged breach of the constitution, but it was signed by the judge, therefore denying these people their rights to a proper judicial hearing and a proper judicial outcome. Uh, there was specifically reserved to the parties liberty to apply to compel compliance. That is that the judge there was the judge had agreed that these people should have the opportunity to complain if the government did not fulfill their obligation under the agreement, which is why it was entered into, for them to fulfill and compliance. And having failed to fulfill compliance, then these people were justified to come back to the court, which is what they were doing at this point, when in fact the government, I mean the judge chased them away, no? Closed their case and chased them away because the other people didn't have a foot or a leg to stand on. They had already declared constitutional violation. And the court had a rule, but that rule uh, was not to change or alter the agreement or the contents of the order, but rather to look at the steps which the parties had taken to complete and, namely, uh, to comply with the order. It was an agreement, but it came with the sanction, like I said, and with the as an order from the. It's a consent order, you call it, okay? And why I call it an order is because it takes the judge to sanction it or to validate it or to give the permission. So they enter consensually into the agreement, but it was also an order from the judge. I can't read all of this stuff here. It's a lot of stuff to read, and the way it's set up on my phone, I'm turning the phone sideways to be able to get maximum of, amount of material to read, and it's still not working. But I have to be pulling it sideways from one side to the next, and it's not working out correctly. We'll have to present for another. We're running out of time, and I need to yield to Mr. Wade. Mr. Wade, I'll just cease and desist on this, sir, and hope that we can pick this up on another night, and just turn over to you for you to fill in whatever little part that I may not have touched just now.
Thank you.
Uh,
I will.
One other thing, feel free to express yourself in whatever way you wish, or express whatever thoughts you have, because the matter is not still live in court anymore. It has already been adjudicated, right? Except for the. So now you, as unlike the previous time when we were trying to tell you not to speak to certain things because we don't want you to get into contempt of the court, now you're free to do your own justice. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Like I say, I just waiting right now and see what the verdict will be, and I we will pick up on that the way forward. Um, it's so sad to see that we as private citizen has to come together and tell the government what they should do, and take our matter and take the people's matter, because it's not our matter, it's the people's matter, to the court in terms of the constitution. I just hope that it ends well. Um, I see that this present administration, is not set out to do right by the people like previous administration. The whole thing is that it's party power, right? It's all about power, right? If they do redistricting, you know, it will affect. If they do it the right way, it will affect the governance of this two-party system that we have, right? In some way or another, right? But the way it's set up right now, they don't want to give up the little constituencies, and it's run by powerful people, right? Little constituency run by powerful people, right? Which they don't want to disseminate that. They don't want to give up that power because that is that run their party, right? Those little constituencies holds their party together, holds the PUP together, holds the UDP together when they vote UDP, right? So I'm saying is that sooner or later, the truth will be told. Sooner or later, if the PUP don't do it, somebody will have to come and do the right thing, right? And it's all we are doing is trying to make the country equal or near as equal. The way it's set up right now, it's a dictatorship. It's pure dictator, right? It's plain to be seen, right? And it's not right. A lot of us is upset about it and tired of it, right? So let's make everyone equal. Let's make the country equal or near as equal. Let's straighten up the election and boundaries department. Have them to do, let them do what they are mandated to do. Not what the PUP tell them to do, not what the UDP had told them to do, right? You're hired, paid by the taxpayers' dollars, right? So do the work of the people, for the country, and stop that partisan actions that you all have, right? You're all a bunch of sheep, right? Sheep. Right? Let's listen to when the master call on a rattle the bell and on a run, right? Afraid to do the right thing, right? Because they promise to know this and push the books this way, push the pencil that way, say this, say that, and don't worry. When you do that, after it's all done, you will be rewarded, greatly rewarded, right? That got to stop, right? So my thing is that I personally not fighting for myself, I'm not fighting for a party, I'm fighting for the Belizean people, I'm fighting for the country, right? So for those who have other notions or other ideas that what we are doing, you must carry that out, right? It's not like that. And on that note, we are running out of time, sadly, but we'll pick this up, and like I say, I am waiting patiently for the ruling from this imported judge, right? See if he rules the right way. If he does not rule the right way, well, somebody will rule the right way. Someone. If he doesn't do it, someone will. So it's not a done deal, and we'll take it all the way. And on that note, I want to thank those who, tune in for tonight. There's other little item I wanted to produce, but it's okay. I wanted, concerning the court system too, something that is happening right now as I speak, but I'll wait until Wednesday, and I will open that. Mr. Dickie Bradley had touched that a little few days ago, developing situation, right? And I just want to continue because I know about it. So, on that note, I want to thank
Thank,
our Belizean brothers, both at home and abroad, those who watch us. Thank you. Those who
I
will
just,
view us a little later, thank you. And it's always a
thank,
pleasure, Leonard, to sit in your company.
great
And
opportunity, Mr. Well, thank you very much, sir, for your contribution. And like I said, we'll take it up a little bit better, and maybe we can explain a bit more with more time, because right now I'm under pressure with time, and because we are about to close out. And I just wanted to say to Ms. Rubina Forte, good night, Ms. Rubina, and thank you for your ongoing. Um, how should
support.
I don't run out of words.
on,
Ongoing support.
on,
And then we
on,
also have uh, Pat Grijalva, and she says this should be this should be taken seriously by the government and the election and boundaries. Redistricting uh, long overdue, which is a fact and which is true. It's overdue to the point that from 1996, I have been flagging that matter in every election that we have had since 1996. I have made a prediction of the election, and in that prediction, I've also had like 2 extra pages of
and it's so
documentation
sad. They all
on the
know
same
that
matter.
it's wrong. They all know it.
And from then till now, we're still pursuing the matter, and both parties come in and out since then, and they refuse to do the right thing. Thank you very much, Belizeans at home and abroad, for your time spared in listening to what we had to offer tonight. I hope that somewhere or another you might have had some positive public benefit from our exercise. Thank you again, and God bless. We'll be gone.